Bienvenue and welcome to the National Managers Community Symposium virtual talk on this Wednesday, October 27th, 2021. Je m'appelle Lisbeth Savard et je suis la dirigeante régionale de la région des Prairies et des Territoires du Nord-Ouest. I'm joined by my colleague, Teresa Martin, NMC Regional Lead for the BC and Yukon region. Together, we are very excited to bring you this virtual talk on thriving with your teams in a hybrid environment, s'épanouir avec vos équipes dans un environnement hybride.
Please note that our event today will be recorded and a YouTube video link will be made available following our session. Veuillez noter que l'atelier d'aujourd'hui sera enregistré et sera disponible sur la chaîne YouTube de la CNG. For the best experience possible, you may wish to disconnect from your VPN in order to improve your experience. Afin d'avoir la meilleure expérience que possible, n'oubliez pas de vous déconnecter de votre VPN. And as we move through today's session, please share your comments in the chat space and questions by using the Q&A button, which is in the language of your choice for your questions. You can vote for questions that you like by clicking on the thumbs up button. And please note that your cameras and microphones are automatically disabled.
Donc, sentez-vous libre de vous exprimer dans la langue officielle de votre choix dans le clavardage et en vous servant des boutons de questions-réponses. Vous pouvez également appuyer sur le bouton OK du pouce levé. Veuillez noter que votre vidéo et vos micros sont automatiquement éteints. We begin this event by acknowledging that we are meeting on Aboriginal land that has been inhabited by Indigenous people from the beginning. As settlers, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. In particular, I would like to acknowledge that I am in Treaty 1 territory. Les terres sur lesquelles je me trouve font partie du territoire traditionnel des peuples Anishinaabe, Cri, Ojibwe, Dakota et Dene et de la patrie de la nation métisse.
For myself, I am fortunate to be on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, in particular, the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam nations. And we invite you to take a moment to reflect on the land on which you live, work, and play. Les conversations virtuelles est un des multiples moyens de la CNG pour rejoindre plus de 400 gestionnaires et aspirants gestionnaires à travers le pays et couvrant les différents sujets qui vous sont importants. Virtual talks are just one of the several ways that the NMC is working to engage over 40,000 managers and aspiring leaders across the country on topics of importance to you. Today, we are very excited to host panelists Natasha Côté-Khan and Jennifer MacDougall. Natasha and Jennifer are leaders in FlexGC, which is a grassroots collective working across the Government of Canada that has come together with the aim of supporting the many public servants who have been directed to work from home as part of the public health response to COVID-19.
Natasha est une agente libre régionale située à London, en Ontario, où elle travaille à domicile depuis mars 2019. Natasha est actuellement en affectation à Transport Canada, où elle est conseillère principale en communication. Elle travaille sur le côté de son bureau avec FlexGC depuis leur lancement en février 2020. Through her work over the past 10 plus years, first at the CSPS, then at the Federal Youth Network and FlexGC, Jennifer is bringing her talent and knowledge of the public sector innovation and modern ways of working in the digital world to her career as a free agent. In addition to being passionate about empowering public servants, Jennifer has expertise in building partnerships and connections while working in a remote environment. Et maintenant, over to you, Natasha and Jennifer.
Thank you very much. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today, Thriving with Your Team in a Hybrid Work Environment. Like the introductions just happened, my name is Natasha and I'll be one of your presenters today. And Jennifer will be joining us as well. We'll be sharing our deck in a moment. Just wait for that to get up. Perfect. So we'll go quickly to the slide 2, please. So I'm joining you today from a cross-section of 4 traditional lands in London, Ontario. And my introduction was just made, but just in addition to what was mentioned about me, I am a mom to 6 children. I've been working with them home sometimes and not home during the pandemic sometimes. I am also working on the Future of Work file known as the RTC project at Transport Canada, and I get the privilege of writing some of our guiding documents that we're using in our department. And I've been with FlexGC since the onset of the pandemic. I joined right before it all started in February of 2020, and I've been going hard ever since. So thank you for having me today, and I'll flip it over to Jen. You're on mute.
That's a rough start. Thanks, Natasha. Comme mentionné, je m'appelle Jennifer MacDougall, puis je travaille présentement comme agent libre pour le Réseau des jeunes fonctionnaires fédéraux. Je me trouve dans l'Atlantique, alors je me trouve sur les terres non cédées traditionnelles des Micmacs. Je travaille à distance, ça fait presque 10 ans. Et présentement, le restant de notre équipe aussi est complètement dispersé à travers du Canada. Je travaille vraiment fort sur la communication et le développement des réseaux à travers de notre famille fédérale. Alors, je vais juste vous parler de c'est quoi le réseau FlexGC. Je vais juste vous expliquer ça dans les 2 langues. So, Natasha and I will both flip back and forth between both languages, and we'll be showing some slides at the same time. Alors, le réseau FlexGC est un collectif de base qui travaille dans l'ensemble du gouvernement du Canada. Nous visons à soutenir les nombreux fonctionnaires qui ont été amenés à travailler de la domicile dans le cadre de réponse de la santé publique de COVID-19. Puis notre objectif, c'est un accompagnement basé sur l'expérience, amplification, les partenariats et la recherche des utilisateurs. So what we're actually focused on as volunteers, and it was mentioned earlier that we do this on the corner of our desk, we're trying to share our personal experiences. So all of us on the FlexGC network have different experiences with working virtually. We are working hard to curate and amplify the efforts made by others across the enterprise. We're supporting others through a variety of partnerships like this one. And we've been conducting some user research to share with other departments and other networks to help them figure out the way forward. Next slide, Natasha. Should be the objective slide. Perfect.
Great, thank you. So during this session, we're going to articulate the mandate and findings of FlexGC Network as it relates to the current state in the virtual work in the GC. And we're going to reflect on the importance of managers' roles in the creation of mentally healthy workplaces. We're going to identify easy wins in establishing stronger virtual teams. We're going to openly discuss ways to overcome common virtual teams challenges. And we're going to share our resources for managers today so that they can take that back and thrive with their own teams.
Alors, vite fait en français, aujourd'hui, on va vous expliquer le mandat et les conclusions du réseau FlexGC en ce qui concerne l'état actuel du travail virtuel au gouvernement du Canada. On va réfléchir sur l'importance du rôle des gestionnaires dans la création du milieu de travail sain pour la santé mentale. On va identifier les gains faciles vers la mise en place d'équipes virtuelles plus fortes. On va discuter ouvertement les moyens de surmonter les défis courants des équipes virtuelles et on va partager des référentiels de ressources pour que les gestionnaires créent leur propre équipe florissante.
Great, so we'll go to the next slide. Thank you. So for all of us as public servants since March of 2020, it was many things for us. It was our first time working remotely, our first time using virtual tools for connection, our first time juggling work and childcare daily, our first time sharing our workspace with our partners and families and pets, our first time living through a pandemic of this magnitude in Canada, and our first time living through multiple lockdowns. On top of all of that, we were living parallel realities. All of us are. Some of us are working with kids underfoot, while others are feeling isolated and alone. Some of us have homes with yards and space to move around, while others are cramped. Some of us are sending or have sent our kids back to school. Others will not for the foreseeable future and are figuring out homeschooling or COVID lockdown momentarily homeschoolings. Some of us have had full offices with doors and desks, and others are squatting at dining room tables or on their couches. Some of us have taken up new hobbies and others miss old routines. And some of us love working from home while other us miss the office life. But what most of us have in common is that life as we knew it has become uncertain, and it's affected how we feel. So at FlexGC, we decided during this massive disruption, it's time to do a survey across all of the government of Canada on hybrid work. We wanted to know, how's it going? What's working? What's not working? And today we're going to talk about this. We'll move to the next slide. So in our survey, we asked many questions. These are just two of the questions, and we'll highlight some of them as we go through our presentation today. We asked across 67 departments, approximately 800 people, many questions. We asked them questions that we thought were important for Canadians. And one of the questions that we landed on was, did you have a formal teleagreement in place with your manager or supervisor before the pandemic? And 29% said yes, before the pandemic, they had a telework agreement, while 71% said no. Now those numbers are almost completely in reverse. 87% have a telework agreement and 13% do not have a telework agreement. So we've changed dramatically there. As well, we asked our colleagues, how often did you work remotely? Out of 779 responses, we had a varied amount of diverse data there, and I'll let you look at the slide to sort of digest it. What is different now is that never, rarely, sometimes, and often equate to less than 7% of those combined stats. And working always remotely is at 93.9%. That's quite a huge change. We'll go to the next slide. And I believe Christine shared our in the chat, our deck that we have created with the results from the survey for our colleagues on the line who would like to have a look at the questions we asked and the answers we got.
Aussi, à travers notre sondage, on avait demandé si les gens avaient la flexibilité dont ils avaient besoin pour gérer leurs responsabilités professionnelles et non professionnelles. Par exemple, prendre soin d'une membre de la famille ou ses intérêts de bénévole. So we also asked about the flexibility, if employees had the flexibility that they needed to juggle their personal and professional life. So 77% of them, said yes, that they had, that they've been working this way for a year and that they have the flexibility that they need, while 23% are still struggling. So what's going on with that 23% and how can we support them? Why is it that they can't find that balance? Obviously, it depends on how you define flexibility and what may be happening for this 23%. So some of the things that we've seen and we've been looking at are the basic work from home etiquette and the expectations. So folks who have never worked from home before may be struggling to try to find that sweet spot about when to turn off your computer or how to switch between that work-life integration. There are a lot of blurred lines when your children are coming and going during the day or other responsibilities are creeping into your daytime hours. You may feel you have to make up those hours in the evening. So instead of just closing everything down, maybe you're putting in some supplemental hours or after business hours. A lot of folks say that they're overloaded with work. And is that a perceived overload or is it an actual overload? We have some tools that we're happy to share with that. I think that Christine's going to drop the link to MS Teams Planner, but talking with your team about who is doing what, so will help you to figure out if some people are overloaded and maybe someone else can pick up the slack. And of course, that ebbs and flows depending on who is working on what file and what things you have going on in your personal life as well. Like Natasha mentioned, some of us have children home, but some of those children are home unexpectedly for 1 week and then back at school. And all of that needs to fit into the way we're scheduling our work as well. And our overall mental health is one of the biggest concerns with feeling like we have that flexibility, we have the right rhythm and that right balance. So communication really is the key. Communication will help you to create trust so that employees feel that they can come to you when they need support. So what we're going to ask you is on the poll that should be launched. I'm just going to give them a sec to launch the poll, and I'll tell you what the poll is about. So we're going to ask you on the line today, if you've had real discussions with all of your employees individually about what flexible work arrangements are available to them. Alors, est-ce que vous avez eu des véritables discussions avec tous vos employés individuellement sur les modalités de travail flexibles disponibles? Do you see the survey, Natasha?
I do not.
Poll?
I'm just waiting for the
Okay.
NMC folks to launch it.
Sorry, Jen, there was a poll there, but it's not coming up.
Okay.
So people are just going to answer in the chat, so you can answer. You can answer in the chat. We have a couple more poll questions, so maybe the other ones we'll be able to use. So I think that what's really important about what we're asking in this question is that just telling your employees that you have flexible work arrangements available isn't enough. Have you spoken with each employee individually and really broken down what are their needs, what is available, and how can you support them through this time?
And we're seeing a lot of yeses in the chat with the occasional no. So that's interesting data. And it's helpful for our following slide. If our NMC folks want to skip ahead the next two slides, because we just did the poll slide.
And then just one more. Yep, perfect. So according to our survey, 68% said yes, that they have spoken with their manager, they know what is available to them, and their manager has offered to support their needs as far as their flexibility. But 32% are still saying, nope, no one has talked to me. I don't know what's available. I don't know what's expected, and I don't have what I need to manage. So that's a pretty high percentage of people who are left uncertain and wondering, what are my options? What can I do? What support is there for me to work flexibly? And how am I going to get through this? You need to have these conversations with your people, and throughout this discussion, and also I'm sure with the next workshop, this will be a theme that you're going to see, that communication can be tricky because we're dealing with a lot of unknowns. And I don't know about your personality type, but my personality type is that I don't like to have conversations when I don't know the full information. And so it is kind of tricky to tell your employees that you don't know what the future holds and to only talk about right now and what you can offer right now. And you may not know. And so that communication and that open, honest, authentic connection is really going to be part of building trust. So we need to really revisit how we're communicating with individuals on our team. So our next slide is a poll. I think we can launch this one.
Yeah. Can we launch this poll? Have you made any intentional efforts to protect your team culture and continue to keep it nurtured?
Avez-vous fait des efforts intentionnels pour protéger la culture de votre équipe et continuer de l'entretenir? Because it's one thing to keep your team afloat. It's another to try to maintain your culture.
Right,
So if
and
your team was, oh, go ahead, Natasha.
I was going to say, I would say the one thing that we've seen is we're working in our FlexGC hats, not in our day job hats, but a lot when we're hearing and scanning and seeing what people are saying across the department, culture, team cohesion, the way that teams are working together and bonding, that is making a big impact on productivity, mental health, and just the not knowing. It makes the not knowing a little bit better. So it looks like a lot of people are trying to maintain and that good team culture, protect it and foster it and nurture it the best that they can. We'll move to the next slide, and it's kind of a big slide. We have lots of information here for you. So on the slide, you can see that there are some examples and some links. We'll share the links in the chat as well. But building a good culture of unity and trust and cohesion is so important. We need to be more purposeful in our intentions of creating that culture. And so at FlexGC, we've been scanning and collecting ideas from other departments. We've been creating products. And so we're going to share some of that with you today to help keep that cohesion and that communication and that fun vibe really interesting and going in your teams. So, you know, back in the day, we had the water cooler or the photocopier where you could take that walk, and as you're walking through your cubicles, you would have this journey where you would say hi to one colleague, maybe chat with another at the photocopier or the water cooler, and then go back. And we did a lot of our work socialization, but also our work dialogue in these little walks that we took. So nowadays, we have to have a virtual water cooler. So we use our MS Team channels, and the way that we've been using them and seeing them used in other departments is that while they're creating channels, they can create fun ones and business ones. And there's other ways to keep the dialogue open in your team's channels. While working in a building office together, we can't do that anymore. So the MS Teams has sort of been the default. And luckily we have it across departments, I think everywhere now. I want to say everywhere, but yeah. And so it's been very helpful. I've seen in my previous position, we had ones for like recipes or joke of the day, but then we also had ones that were business. It was very much a business channel. We have our stand-up meetings, whether they're every day, every other day, once a week, twice a week. These are a touch point for your colleagues to get together. You schedule them within the core working hours of your office, since we are working flexibly and in this hybrid work model where we may not all be working the same hours. So you try and schedule those at a time where everybody is online at the same time. And this allows your team to get together, chat about their priorities, the work that they're building on, how it links with other files, and also just have that touch point or that connection where you actually can see your colleagues that day. We at FlexGC also offer advice on considering some fun team building activities every once in a while, not just the same day-to-day business stuff. It doesn't have to be all the time, but sometimes it's nice to do that. You can have a virtual all staff. You can have games at a fun level. It helps build trust. It helps understand ways that we individually like to work, how others like to work, how we work as a team. Some examples are trivia games that can be arranged, like there's free spaces, Kahoot. FlexGC wrote a blog on this. We have a whole bunch of resources and links available where you can get that information to try and plan something fun. There's lots of different kinds. There's a personality style assessment on the card that you see right now. There's an example. It's a user to me profile. We will share that link in the chat as well, where you can build a little card out all about you and your profile and then share that with your team members. So we have a lot of resources for fun team building, I guess, activities that you can do with your team. And every once in a while, it's nice to have them. Team charter is also a shared understanding of how the team works together to accomplish its mission. We love team charters because they create the conditions to have healthy, ongoing conversations about the work conditions, identify what's working and what's not working, and they're iterative, so you can make tweaks as you go. You can talk about how you can increase job satisfaction, productivity, or you can talk about the business stuff. There are online resources available to create a team charter. At FlexGC, we created a self-guided team charter where managers can take that as a toolkit and work it through with their team as a session. So we're going to share that in the link as well so that you can have that resource. And we'll go over to the next slide.
Alors, c'est mon tour. Je vais continuer juste un petit peu en français.
Just a second. Just sorry, Jennifer.
Go ahead, Christine.
There's a question for Natasha or Jennifer, and it's, can you describe the user to me profile a bit more?
Yeah, so if we go back to the previous slide, you can see the template that's there. And essentially, it is like a one snap shot. You can put your picture on there, you put your name, you can talk about what it is that you have your pet peeves. Let's say for me, for instance, pet peeves are cold calls. I don't like it when people cold call me on MS Teams because my days are so jam-packed, back-to-back meetings. And so I prefer scheduled appointments to the cold call, right? So that might be one of my pet peeves. The best way to reach me would be, you know, MS Teams, email, whatever you would like to put on there. You can put your social media handle on there too. Maybe you use Twitter as your professional platform. You want to use that, or another LinkedIn link. You can put your schedule in there so your colleagues know, like, I'm working 7 to 3 every day, or I'm working 9 to 5 every day. So then you can sort of establish where those core hours lie. They're obviously between the hours of 9 and 3, and that would be when you do your connected meetings. You can put in there what you value. You know, I value, for myself, I value asking a lot of questions. The why questions don't scare me. I love those questions because it really forces me to think about what I'm working on. You know, so I value why questions, right? For someone else, they may not value that. So it's good to share that information with your team, because then you know how you would like to work together. I hope that answers a little bit of how you could use the user to me profile and how it would work for you and your team. So I'll let Jen go back to her next slide. Thanks, Christine, for raising that.
Now, the user guide to me can be used for a lot of things. It can be used from a manager's perspective to get to know the people on your team, obviously also the people on your team to get to know each other. It can help you with your operations in what time of day most people are best at working or prefer to meet. I know that I prefer to meet in the morning over my coffee while my brain is fresh, because once I start doing my work, my brain gets bogged down, and by the end of the day, I'm not very creative and typically not in a very good mood, to be quite honest. So if you want my freshest brain, you have to get me in the morning, but everyone is different. So these are things that you put on your user guide to me so that we can really accommodate all of those preferences. They're really great to use from a manager's perspective because you can get to know the people on your team. Also, when you're looking at other tools like psychometric tools, if you want to run psychometric tools on people on your team and then have them share their profiles with each other and with you, that's another great way to get to know each other. And you could build your user guides to me off of those. I could talk about that all day.
Me too. So the team charter that we've shared in the link as well, it does have some facets of the user to me profile in there, and you do work through that as a team. So you could use the user to me profile as part of the activity to building your team charter. But it is a great resource and it can help everyone sort of realign. And I think that realignment with everything changing all the time is important, and it needs to happen at every change. So.
Yes, we're all becoming very good at change thanks to COVID-19 and working from home. So the next piece we're going to look at is a little bit about mental health. I'm going to do it in French first and then I'll switch over to English. Alors, mon organisation a fait un effort pour soutenir la santé mentale et le bien-être pour les employés pendant la pandémie. So the question that we asked was if your organization was supportive of mental health and well-being of employees during the pandemic. So 75% said yes. So that's good news that 75% think that we're making an effort. But there's still 25% out there that we need to target who either said no or they were unsure. So why do they not think that we're making enough of an effort? Well, the question is really about, are we having authentic discussions with them to talk about how they're doing, to see what they need, to explain to them what is available to meet those needs. Those conversations can be a little bit tricky to maneuver. And like we said, we are personally not experts on mental health, but the session right after this are the mental health experts that are there to talk about how to have those really deep, meaningful discussions with your employees with regards to mental health, with regards to flexibility, work-life balance, and overall well-being. So make sure that you hit that session. And if not, then make sure that you get the recording afterwards because the sessions are all being recorded. That's going to be a very important one to add to this one. So what can you do immediately in addition to having those discussions? Well, part of that is actively listening. Active listening isn't just listening to the words that your employees are saying, but also watching their nonverbal and paying attention to when people are acting a little off from their usual behavior. And then probing and asking, you know, is there something going on at home? Is there something going on with work? Is there anything that I can help with? But actively listening means paying attention and not just doing the operational work back and forth email. And so that's why you do need to have some face-to-face time with your employees, meaning that these tools are bringing us a lot of value in that respect. At FlexGC, we share a lot of resources about practicing mindfulness techniques, desk yoga, regular yoga. We talk about walking meetings. Christine, who's here with us today, is an advocate for the GC Active. She's always posting profiles, pictures, and challenges for people to get outside and get active and be doing things to support their physical health, which obviously is related to mental health. As managers, it's really important that you're leading by example. Are you taking breaks? Are you drinking your water? Are you turning off your computer? Are you taking the weekends? Are you going outside? Because if your employees know that you're working 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, they will emulate that for the most part, or they will at least think that that is expected. So it's important as managers that you think about what is the example that you're leading by. Natasha mentioned those water cooler chats. So find a way to integrate those casual chats into your day-to-day. So whether that's scheduling longer meetings, whether that's, calling people randomly, like Natasha says she doesn't like. I send Natasha pictures of my pets and she'll send me pictures of her pets. That's how we sometimes connect. I think talk to other people about what they do for their water cooler chat and how they're finding ways to connect. There's a lot of folks looking for new innovative ways to connect. Natasha mentioned all staffs and games and things like that. If you check out any GC groups on any social media, people are always sharing ideas of things that they've tried. Another thing that's really important now, it's always been important, but even more so, I would say now that everyone is dispersed, is demonstrating appreciation. So how we demonstrate appreciation to our teammates needs to be received by them in the way that it's intended. So shameless plug, I don't own this book, like I own this copy, but I didn't write it. The language of appreciation in the workplace, c'est aussi disponible en français. It's actually something that might help you out with how to demonstrate appreciation to the people on your team. It really helped me out with my relationships with my colleagues. Just remember that your mindset is key, that the work, yes, needs to continue to get done, but those relationships are important and the people are important. And you want to make sure that you can get the work done through those people. So keeping them happy and healthy is very important. And you're going to need to be very intentional and have planned communication in order for that to work. Next slide, Natasha.
Just if you can do a recap in French for our French colleagues on the line.
Oui, absolument. Do you want me to do a back slide then?
Yeah.
Parfait. Alors, c'est important d'avoir des discussions authentiques avec tout le monde sur notre équipe. La session qui nous suit, c'est une session sur la communication puis la santé mentale avec des experts en santé mentale. Moi puis Natasha, on n'est pas des experts en santé mentale. Mais les choses que vous pouvez faire vite fait, c'est d'avoir une écoute active quand vous parlez avec vos employés ou vos équipes et voir s'ils sont comme d'habitude ou s'ils sont un peu, moi je dis off, s'ils ne sont pas eux-mêmes cette journée-là, puis leur demander pourquoi. Ces conversations-là sont vraiment importantes. Nous autres, on a partagé beaucoup de ressources qui se rapportent au meditation, à yoga, des activités de respiration, puis aussi GC Active. Christine, qui est avec nous autres aujourd'hui, elle fait beaucoup de défis avec GC Active sur les médias sociaux. C'est vraiment important. Aussi, c'est aussi important de gérer votre équipe par exemple. Alors, soyez l'exemple que vous voulez être pour vos employés. Prenez vos pauses, buvez de l'eau, mangez votre déjeuner, prenez des marches, travaillez pas les fins de semaine ni les nuits parce que vos employés vont suivre votre exemple. Alors, c'est vraiment important. Et c'est aussi important d'avoir une appréciation pour votre équipe. Je viens juste de monter le livre que moi j'ai en anglais, mais c'est aussi disponible en français si vous en voulez. Je sais que ça va mal avec mon background, mais on pourrait le mettre dans le chat. Ça s'appelle The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. Alors, les 5 langages d'appréciation au travail. Et aussi d'être vraiment intentionnel avec votre communication, avec votre équipe pour renforcer les relations entre les personnes. Parce que c'est les personnes qui font le travail, ce n'est pas juste le travail qui est important. All right, Natasha, back to you.
Great. So just to summarize everything that we talked about today, and we gave you a lot of resources in the chat, and I really invite you to save those links, have a look at them, because they are very helpful tools as we're navigating our new, whatever this is, normal, and help us with our colleagues, with our employees, with our managers, and working in a way that feels a little bit more like we're collaborating and not really working in our homes all by ourselves. So in summary, we've concluded that times have really changed, and that change has led to a lot of uncertainty that's still out there. I'm surprised by the amount of uncertainty that we still see when we're scanning and seeing, but we are seeing it. We've also recognized that culture, team cohesion, and mental health are at the forefront of this change, that blurred lines between working at home and living at work need to be assessed, addressed, and revisited often. And what we are seeing at FlexGC as we're doing our scanning and recording of the data in this time of transformation and change is that retention is becoming an issue. And if we don't address these pressing factors, it will continue to be an issue. So we'll flip to the final slide.
So we've given you a lot of data, a lot of things to think about, a lot of things that seem like, oh my goodness, this is a big checklist. I'm not sure I can manage staff anymore. There's a lot to do in addition to my work. Well, we're going to give you our 3 C's for quick wins. So the things that you need to be able to do, and I'll repeat it for you in French afterwards, practice open and honest communication with your team. When you don't know, tell them you don't know. When you think you know something, tell them what you think you know. As soon as you know, tell them what you do know, so that they're not waiting and guessing and coming up with conspiracy theories, because I think that there's a lot of that happening across departments. So share what you know as openly and honestly as you can. Collaborate with your colleagues, work as a team, work in the open, check on individuals, check on their needs. When someone has too much on their plate, offer to take some off, offer to take some work for yourself if your plate is not full. It's important that we're really working collaboratively with our colleagues and with our teams. Connecting with your team in a way that's meaningful for them is important. So the user guide to me, the team charter, any type of psychometrics, languages of appreciation, any of that is really going to help that connection with the people on your team. You'll always get more from your people when they feel connected to the organization and connected to the team. So look for ways to meaningfully connect with people. Don't just have trivia day or hat day because it's on your checklist. Check if that's the kind of thing your team is into and find what is meaningful for them. Because as Natasha mentioned, the culture is the piece that's really important. We want to have a culture where people are feeling connected and happy and healthy, and communication is the key to that. Alors, les 3 C qu'on va vous laisser avec, c'est la communication, la collaboration, la connexion pour renforcer la culture de votre équipe. So with that, I know that there are some questions in the Q&A, and Christine may have even grabbed some from the chat.
Yeah, and just Christine has shared in the link our resources. We'll share them again, but quickly, if you did not see those resources, the chat disappears and you can't access it again, you can always email us at flexgc.canada@gmail.com. Someone will respond to you, may not be super promptly, but and we will share whatever resources it is that you're looking for that we have.
Okay, alors merci Natasha et Jennifer. So we'll now open the floor up to questions that you may have for any of our panelists. Donc, veuillez partager vos questions en utilisant le bouton de questions et réponses, Q&A, dans la langue officielle de votre choix. Et puis, vous pouvez voter pour les questions que vous voulez poser en cliquant le bouton thumbs up, so you can vote for the questions that you'd like us to ask. So I do see we have some questions in the chat. So I'll start off with the first one. So the first one is, hybrid workplace can be defined by different people as different things. So can you please define hybrid workplace for this conversation?
Natasha, do you want me to go first? I know that you work in the future of work file. So would you rather start off with that?
Sure. The way that we're defining hybrid is basically, a flexible way of working. So, we're all working in a distributed model, which I think is what hybrid means to me and what I'm thinking about when I'm talking about it. You know, Jen might be working in her office, someone might be working in a GC shared workspace, one of those touchdown spaces that aren't essentially a GC office, but are a co-working space. Someone might be in the office all the time. To me, this is a hybrid work model. We're not all collectively in one shared space. We're working differently. Maybe we're working different hours. You know, like I said, maybe it's 7 to 3, maybe someone's working flexibly and they're working, you know, 4 hours of their day super early and 4 hours of their day super late because they've got their kids at home during a COVID lockdown, while their class is locked down or what have you for the month, and it's temporary. This is what the term hybrid means to me. It's true flexible in being in your hours, in your days, in your location, in where you are.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for answering that question. Okay, so the next one, does personality type influence whether employees prefer working at home versus in the office? So for example, do introverts report higher levels of productivity at home? That's what I have heard anecdotally, but it would be interesting if there was more research on it. That's a really good question.
It's a really good question. I'll start that one off because that is one of my passions. So pre-COVID, I was delivering a lot of sessions on psychometrics. So it is something I'm passionate about and watching how team dynamics are affected. I would have to say, though, that extroverts, so let's talk about extroverts. Extroverts probably were very afraid to work at home because they're missing that connection with other people and the hubbub of walking to the water cooler. So your extroverts, for those of you who don't know, are the people who are walking to your water cooler, not because they need water, but because they're looking for other people to talk to. So I would say that most extroverts have by now figured out ways to fuel that fire. So I'm fairly extroverted. I would assume Natasha's fairly extroverted. In a meeting, you can tell by who is talking how much, who leaves themselves off mute, who puts a lot of emojis in the chat. That tends to be a sign of extroversion. So I think that extroverts are figuring out a new way to fill their cup for that connection. Whereas introverts are getting probably a little bit more of that quiet and that space when they need it, that they might have been struggling to find before in the cubicle farm. Because if you remember, GC Workplace was heading from Workplace 2.0 to activity-based workplace. And so that's defined space that some strong introverts were, giving up and ending up working that open space. Well, now they are working in a space that is theirs to control. So it's really hard to say how they're being impacted, but I think that we're all putting things into place that suits our personality type. And that's why the user guide to me is such a great tool alongside the team charter, because if you can say, I only like to be on camera 1 hour a day, or I don't like it when we have team meetings and everyone talks at the same time. Can we please have an agenda? Those preferences are going to come out when you have those honest and authentic discussions. So introversion and extroversion and preferences are things we need to be considerate about, but I don't think that it necessarily is going to define who's happier working where or who should be working where, as much as it's a discussion that we need to open up and have with our team so that everyone is getting what they need to be happy. What would you say, Natasha?
Well, I agree with you. And I also think that there's many ways that we can look at this question, right? Like for me as a person who I would say was an extrovert prior to working remotely, I've been working this way for 3 years now. So it's a little bit different for myself because I wasn't forced into working this way. I chose this way of working. But for myself, I was surprised at how much I liked it. I didn't think I would. And I think that's the surprising part for some of the extroverts, but we're also seeing people who are extroverts who are feeling isolated and, they need to go back into the office. And we're seeing it on both the introverted side too. Some love working this way, some want to go back to the office. So I really think that whatever your personality type is, I don't know if that's the defining factor as to whether or not you prefer to working remotely or virtually. Or going into an office. I think it works out to personal preference, and that is varied across both the two personality types. So.
Merci. Des très bons conseils puis des bonnes observations dans ce que vous avez partagé. Okay, another question in English. So how important is being on camera? Some team members don't want to be on camera or even meet often. So are there any tips to encourage them to connect? So.
Oof,
one?
that's a hard one. So I would say, I mean, we have to honor people's preferences. And if people don't want to be on camera, I get it. I find I have camera fatigue by the end of the day. I don't think I would ever do a video meeting or a Skype, even with my family at night, because I have video fatigue all day of watching myself on video and watching other people on video. It is a little bit exhausting. I could think if someone really didn't want to be on camera, I would maybe unpack that a little bit and figure out what it is you don't want to be on camera for. So this morning I had a meeting with someone who had just gotten out of the shower and her hair was still kind of up and wet. And she said, I don't want to be on camera because I'm not ready yet. Well, okay, if you're not camera ready, that's okay. If they never want to be on camera, I would talk about why. I think that as a manager, so for this group, what's important is to be able to see your employees and make sure they're okay. That you can see people's nonverbal, and I mean, you only get a little bit of their nonverbal, right? But you can see by their mannerisms if they're okay or not okay sometimes. And so just seeing them and making sure they're okay, I think would feel reassuring. But Natasha, do you have anything to add?
I'm a big advocate for personal preference and letting the person choose that that choice. You know, a manager could state their preference ahead of the game. You know, saying like, I prefer to see my employees. But as a person who's working in this space and as someone who's been working this way for a long time, you know, I've been scanning and looking at that, especially in the culture piece. You know, some people feel more connected when they're seeing their colleagues. Some people don't really. It makes no difference in whether or not they're connected. If they can hear their voice and they're talking, or if they're messaging in Teams Messenger, or if they're communicating through their channels, they feel connected. So from the culture piece, it is varied again. But what I found really interesting is from a GBA Plus perspective, we see that there are a lot of reasons why people aren't turning on their cameras that I had never thought about before. You know, someone might be transgendering and changing in that moment and may not want to announce that yet and put themselves on camera and really put that in the forefront. That might be something very personal to them, and you have to allow that personal journey to happen without forcing it for them. There are some people who have deep anxiety, and staring at their own face all day causes them issues with maybe their eating disorder or their mindset, and they just it elevates, you know, how much they're feeling in terms of how they don't like the way that they are looking. And so you have to really be considerate of the other factors as to why someone might not want their camera on. And, you know, the human in me really gets that. So I think we need to remember that as managers as well when we're working this way.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so kind of along these lines, the next question is, how do we deal with senior managers who are extroverts who want people back in the office mainly so they have people to talk to? So that's kind of funny. We're hearing allegations of a loss of team cohesion as a reason to push people back into the office, which may or may not be the case. So
that cracks me up, because I'll share my personal anecdote, and then I know that Natasha actually has the right answer. But I know that my husband was very eager to go back to work. He works in private sector. He got an accommodation so he could go back because he just wanted to go back and see people. There's no people there, so he goes there and he's lonely there instead of being lonely here, which I find super strange. So I guess if you're lucky enough to mandate the people to go back and hang out with you, maybe that's fun. But yeah, otherwise we should be thinking about that as well, because why do you want to go back? If you want to go back to hang out with your friends, you would have to hope your friends are going to be there. Natasha?
There are some real reasons why we can't actually force everyone back to the office yet anyway, despite our wishes or our needs or our wants. I mean, bandwidth is like issue number one. Is there enough bandwidth to support everybody working this way? I know when I worked in the old normal, I worked on I don't even remember what it was called. It was Cisco, where I had my phone and my my WebEx that I connected with. Now we have MS Team, which uses much more bandwidth, and we are seeing across the system that there is just not enough capacity for everybody to go back to the office. So, you know, our wishes may not be possible. And I would say in a lot of departments, unless you've been decided as one of the departments that is mandated to go back full time because of the operational requirement, and so you have been gifted the bandwidth, then you likely cannot do that. Also too, I think If you were to bring people back into the office full-time to work this way, there are colleagues that are now distributed that weren't before. Now they may have moved to other places. I know of at least 3 people who have moved to the Atlantic. So there must be something about that beautiful ocean over there I want to go. And I myself have never worked in NCR, but I've always reported to NCR. So then what? You guys are connecting on teams to 4 or 5 colleagues that are already dispersed anyways. You're doing that in a neighborhood with many people who are connecting, and all of a sudden the noise becomes unmanageable and the system can't work this way. So it's thinking about all those think pieces that go behind that idea. I really don't think that we're ready yet. I think that we're still in the process of trying to figure all of that out at the higher departmental level before we can make those decisions as managers and say, like, it's time to come back. I do think that having people come together every once in a while, if I had the option to go back into the office every once in a while to have an all staff or what have you, or maybe go for that set drink afterwards with my colleagues, I would love that, but it's just not an option for me, and it's not my reality. So, you know, when that does happen, I can tell you that I have FOMO hard. I really wish that I could be there and participate in that. So then there's some of that you have to take into consideration too, like how to incorporate those sort of moments for your colleagues that are outside in a way that is still inclusive. So I'm leaving it as like a whole bunch of think pieces. There is no answer yet.
Well, and I think that managers are going to have to talk to their employees and see who's game to go back. So instead of mandating people back, there will be people who want to go back. So talk to your team and see who wants to go back. And then maybe they'll be your new work posse and you can have cake and donuts with them. I miss potlucks and birthday cake. And if you want to lure me back with a Costco cake, I will go back once a week for cake. But that's it.
That's awesome. Oh, that's so funny. Okay, so the next question, actually the next 2 questions I'll kind of combine because I think they're a little bit similar. So the question is, what are your thoughts as to how managers can performance manage in a hybrid environment? And then there was another question along the lines of guidelines for evaluating performance in the future. So an hybrid model, I hope I'm saying that okay. No matter what's done, some employees underperform when away from direct supervision. So I think, yeah, the questions here are kind of around that performance management piece. So I don't know who wants to take that.
I know Natasha has some tools that she can talk about that she uses to manage workload on her teams so that she can see what people are working on.
Yeah, so you can visually see through using the MS Planner, and we did share that link to the Wiki MS Teams Planner so that it can show you how to use the tutorial. It starts off in MS Teams looking very like a Kanban board, which is like Post-it notes all over, but there is in the top right-hand corner a list function where you can click the list and then sort it by employee, and you can very easily see who has been hammered with work and who is not, and you can distribute that work evenly. And so I think that is something that is super handy as a manager to be able to manage who's working on what and who's being productive and who isn't. Also, as well, I think that we're measuring now differently working in this way, and trust is a big two-way street between the employee and the manager, right? So that conversation at the outset, you know, between manager and employee can happen, and you can let them know that, you know, I'm trusting you to do the work, and you're trusting me to communicate what you need. Talk to me if I'm not communicating. If you're sitting there wondering what you should do, then come to me. And if you're sitting there wondering why the heck is she giving me so much work, then talk to me again. This is something that has to happen all the time, and the trust to have that communication is something that we're seeing a lot of. And then we're measuring based on outputs. I think previously when we were looking at the system, it was like inputs, right? We're all coming in at 8, we're clocking in at 4, we're all there, so you're working. Now it's, you know, what have you done today? You know, what product are you working on? And this is where the stand-up comes very handy, right? I can come in at 9 a.m. and I'm meeting with Jen and my other colleagues, and I can say, today I'm working on A, B, and C. I have some capacity to help. If anybody needs any help, let me know. Someone may say, I'm working on A, B, C, D, E, F. If you have capacity, maybe you could take F off my plate. And this communication with the team happens seamlessly. And you can really evaluate as you're watching your teams communicate, you know, how the work is getting done, who's being productive, who's being a good team player, you know, and how your system is working. So those are sort of like my tangible takeaways in terms of measuring performance.
Right. Okay, so I think we have time for one last question. Let me see here. So understanding that standardized departmental policies are still being developed, the delays and uncertainty and blind policies as 2 days in the office per week miss the opportunity to rethink public service working models and maximum flexibility. So have you any visibility on departmental timelines and common solutions to future work models?
We know what we think and we know what the research shows. And luckily, Natasha's actually working on that file as a free agent in her department. So Natasha, do you know when we're going to be seeing anything standardized, or is anything standardized ever coming out?
I think the guidance from OCRO has been interdepartmentally, everybody has the freedom to work on a flexible model, a hybrid model, or of their choice. They're allowing departments to think about that in-house. But just cross-departmentally, people who are working on this, we are scanning and we are talking and we are sharing our information and our resources to make sure that we are thinking about everything. I think even though we've been given permission to think about how we want to work in our own sandbox, we're broadening our horizon and still having that shared dialogue and communication. There's a lot of information out there, and I think that collectively we're putting together, the resources that we think everyone needs. But I think no doubt what will happen is people will see that it will become a phased approach that's launched within their departments, and likely it will be iterative and we will learn as we go, because really it is the first time that we are changing our system to this magnitude. And I want to say yay, it was time, but there's a lot of pieces behind that you have to think about facilities, you have to think about securities, you have to think about HR, LR, there's so much that's involved. And so it is not a small quick fix. The direction from OCRO only just came out just in the summer. So as most of us were kind of in a holding pattern, just like everyone else, now we're frantically hitting the pavement and running hard and fast and furious. I think we're all making good headway. In terms of a timeline, it's hard to say because each department, like I said, are working on it in our own timelines. For TC, we just had our TC talks this week and shared at the deputy level some of the pieces that we're working on and what we're thinking about. And, we're still working. So that's all I can say. I mean, I wish I had sort of a magic wand that said, January 10th. That's the day, but I don't.
On the lottery numbers.
Yeah,
right?
We're working on it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for questions. C'est tout le temps qu'on a à ce moment pour les questions. But more information about FlexGC is also posted in the virtual expo section of our symposium for those who are interested. And of course, the NMC will be posting the video on YouTube, and we'll share the link on our social media channels and our mailing list if you'd like to watch it again and share with your colleagues. We've mentioned in the chat and in the Q&A that we will be posting links and the presentation into the NMC's GC Connects pages. And of course, FlexGC has a bunch of pages of their own, which they've posted in the chat. So do keep watch on those. Et aussi, nous allons envoyer un courriel pour votre feedback après l'événement, et les ressources vont être là aussi. So if you have any questions that we're unable to get to, you can email FlexGC, you can email NMC as well. Or you can email any one of us directly, and we'll certainly get the answers from Natasha and Jen and get back to you. And we'd also like to invite you to join us in the WonderMe desktop app. It's an online networking opportunity for symposium participants to connect and collaborate virtually with each other. It's pretty cool. You just log in there and you can drop in video and have conversations. There is a room for hybrid and virtual working. So definitely check that out if you're somebody who wants to try that. It does not work on smartphones. It is a desktop app. And so, une occasion de réseautage virtuel vous attend sur l'appli wonder.me afin que l'équipe de la CNG, ses partenaires et les participants au symposium discutent et collaborent ensemble pour le BAI et de cette application, je m'excuse, vous trouverez des liens dans l'espace de l'expo et dans l'agenda de symposium, et aussi je l'ai mis dans le chat.
Oui, alors, Teresa and I would like to thank our panelists, Natasha Côté-Khan and Jennifer MacDougall from FlexGC for joining us today and providing such invaluable information. I know I have lots of takeaways, so thank you so much. We also want to thank the NMC team for their support, as well as the technical support that we received from the Federal Youth Network through the use of their Zoom account, and the incredible support that we received from both Marcella Popovich and Joshua Frames. So thank you again to all of you. Merci à tous de vous être joints à nous et d'avoir participé à cet événement.
Thanks very much for having us.